Wife cheated on me with my best man at our wedding. Now she's humiliated by her family. Hey, I'm a 28-year-old guy who was supposed to be in Hawaii right now for my honeymoon with Brenda, my 27-year-old wife. Brenda has beautiful brown hair, and I was so excited to spend my life with her. We got married yesterday, which should have been the best day ever. But things went horribly wrong. Right after we got married, I found out that Brenda had cheated on me with my best man just before we were supposed to say our vows. Can you imagine? We had a big 2-day wedding planned with a bachelor party one day and the actual wedding the next. The rule was that Brenda and I shouldn't see each other at all during these 2 days until we met at the wedding altar. So, here's what happened. We both had our own parties at the same place but in different areas. The groomsmen and bridesmaids could go back and forth between the two, but Brenda and I were supposed to stay apart. Both parties were really fun. We partied hard, had a lot to drink, and I even passed out at midnight. The next morning, I got up, got dressed, and was all set to meet Brenda's parents and go through with the wedding. But then, everything just fell apart when I learned about the cheating. It turned what was supposed to be my happiest day into a total nightmare. So after the wedding ceremony, we all went to pick up Brenda's grandparents from the airport, and then we headed back for a big lunch celebration with our friends and family. Everyone was toasting to our happiness, and it seemed like a perfect day up until then. But then, things took a turn. I excused myself to go to the bathroom, and that's when I overheard a couple of janitors talking. They were gossiping about something shocking. They said they saw the bride, my new wife, making out with my best man in the restroom. One janitor was totally sure he saw Brenda in her wedding dress kissing the best man right there. The other janitor mentioned seeing the best man early in the morning in Brenda's room, and at first he thought it was me, the groom, but obviously it wasn't. I just stood there in the restroom, listening to all this, feeling shocked and heartbroken. When I finally stepped out, the janitors were super surprised to see me. They quickly left the area, looking really awkward. I looked around to see if there were any cameras in the restroom that could prove this, but there weren't any. However, I noticed a camera in the lobby outside the restroom. Driven by a mix of anger and desperation, I rushed to the room where Brenda had stayed the night before to find out more about what had happened. With the memory of the janitor's gossip still fresh, I spotted a camera outside Brenda's room. Hoping it might have captured something, I called our wedding manager. I asked him to get the recordings from both the camera near the restroom and the one outside Brenda's room. He seemed hesitant at first, but after seeing how upset I was, he agreed to help me out. I really didn't want to go back to the lunch where everyone was celebrating, but I also didn't want to make a big scene in front of all our guests. So I went back to the table. Sitting there, I couldn't stop watching Brenda and my best man. They were chatting and laughing like nothing had happened. It was like a punch in the gut seeing them so carefree. I felt so alone. The two people who were supposed to be my closest allies on this important day had betrayed me. It seemed like everyone else was having a great time, dancing and enjoying themselves. They even tried to get me to join in. Noticing I looked upset and asking if I was okay, I just said I was tired and sat out. Then my best man had the nerve to ask Brenda to dance, and she said yes. Watching them dance together, knowing what I knew, was unbearable. If only I hadn't overheard that conversation, I might have been out there dancing too, happy and oblivious. But there I was, feeling like my whole world had just flipped upside down. Seeing Brenda and my best man dancing together felt like a punch to the stomach. The more they laughed and moved to the music, the more I couldn't help but imagine what might have happened between them the night before. It was torture, and I was trapped in these horrible thoughts, imagining all the ways they might have betrayed me. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from the wedding manager. He had the recordings. I quickly asked him to meet me in my room, away from the party and the painful sight of Brenda and the best man together. I hurried back to my room, my heart pounding. The wedding manager arrived shortly after with the footage. I thanked him, took the recordings, and asked him to leave. I also told him to let anyone who asked know that I wanted to be alone. He nodded and quietly left the room. I locked the door behind him. My hands were shaking as I prepared to play the recordings. I knew that whatever I saw next could change my life forever. I played the footage from the wedding day, focusing first on the lobby outside the restroom. I watched as my best man entered the men's restroom. One by one, others left, and soon he was alone. It looked like he waited until the restroom was empty, locked the door from inside, and then made a call, probably to Brenda. I braced myself, knowing that what I might see next could confirm my worst fears. Seeing Brenda sneak into the restroom and then locked in there with my best man for nearly 10 to 12 minutes shattered me. During that time, other guests tried to use the restroom, only to find the door bolted shut. Eventually, the janitor had to come, tried knocking with no answer, and then had to direct others to use a different restroom upstairs. When the janitor finally unlocked the door, Brenda rushed out as if nothing had happened. But to me, it was clear what had transpired. I was heartbroken, tears streaming down my face as the truth of their betrayal hit me. Driven by a need to know everything, I played the footage from the night before. It confirmed my worst fears. It wasn't just a momentary lapse, they had planned it. I watched them making out in the lobby on their way to her room, his hands all over her. The thought of what likely continued inside her room overwhelmed me, and I broke down completely. Alone in my room, I cried uncontrollably, mourning the loss of the two most important relationships in my life on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Meanwhile, my door echoed with knocks, and my phone blared with endless texts and calls, but I couldn't face anyone. I just stood there, crying and cursing my fate, completely devastated. After sending the event manager to ask everyone to give me some space, the knocking finally stopped. But Brenda wouldn't stop. She kept texting me, trying to check on me. Overwhelmed and unable to deal with it anymore, I switched off my phone to get a moment of peace. However, I couldn't stay put for long. Restlessness got the better of me, and I stormed out of my room, desperate for some fresh air and a change of scenery. When I stepped outside, I noticed that most of the guests had already left. Only a few family members remained, our parents, siblings, and some close friends. The best man had disappeared too. Brenda was there, crying, surrounded by her maid of honor and her parents who were trying to console her. As I approached, everyone turned their attention towards me. My mom came up to me, full of concern, asking what had happened. Brenda, however, stayed back, likely knowing what was coming next. I couldn't hold back any longer. In a moment of raw emotion, I looked straight at Brenda and said sarcastically, "I'm really enjoying the marriage right now." Her tears intensified, and as the questions started flying from everyone around, I turned my phone back on. Taking a deep breath, I showed her father the footage of Brenda making out in the lobby with the best man. The shock and disgust on his face said it all. It was clear to everyone what had happened. Without another word, I got in my car and drove away from the venue, leaving behind the chaos and the shattered pieces of what was supposed to be my new life. The event manager called me for the final settlement, and I asked him to take it from the bride, putting up a show at the venue. I don't know who paid the settlement and what happened afterwards because I haven't spoken to anyone since leaving the place. I drove off more than 200 miles to a remote countryside and have been staying here since yesterday afternoon. I left the venue in my wedding suit, so on the way I got rid of it and changed into my gym clothes lying on the trunk. My condition is just so pathetic. I haven't spoken to anyone. The last meal I had was my wedding lunch. I wanted to visit the pastor for the annulment process, but just don't have any motivation to move my butt. We had our flight to Hawaii this morning, and in the middle of all this chaos, I forgot to cancel it. In fact, I woke up today with the final calls from airlines to board the flight. That money went to waste. I canceled the hotel bookings, but got nil returns because I was canceling them post-check-in time. I got some money back only for the return flight from Hawaii and some water sports bookings. Otherwise, I lost everything in the true sense anyway. Monetary loss is nothing compared to the mental stress that I'm going through. I don't know how I'm going to deal with all this trauma. My head is hurting so bad. This loneliness is killing me. But I don't want to talk or meet with anyone. I don't know how to explain my situation. You don't have to explain your situation. She just did the most incredibly terrible thing to you. Now for the updates. Update 1. Hey there. Thanks for sticking with me while I share my pretty tough story. Things have been really rough. I'm still feeling down, but I'm a bit better than when I first ran away to a random place last week. I ended up at a cheap motel next to the highway where lots of truck drivers and people on road trips stop for the night. I didn't really care about where I was staying. I just needed to get away from everything that was familiar. A couple of days after I arrived, I realized I needed to grab some basic stuff and maybe get some food because I hadn't eaten properly. The motel had a little supermarket downstairs, so I went there. By then, I smelled pretty bad because I'd been drinking a lot and hadn't showered. After I cleaned up, I decided it was time to sort out the mess with the wedding. I went to see the pastor who married us. He was really shocked when I told him what went down after the ceremony. I told him straight up that I wanted to act like the wedding never happened. I didn't really know the rules about getting a marriage annulled. The pastor explained that an annulment is a way to cancel a marriage, like it never existed. But it's only allowed in specific situations, like if there was fraud, if someone was forced into it, or if the vows were made without really understanding them, because someone was drunk or high. I brought up the idea to the pastor that maybe my situation could count as fraud since she cheated right before we said our vows. But it turned out things were a bit more complicated because we had officially registered our marriage at the magistrate's office, following all the legal steps. That meant an annulment wasn't possible, and I'd have to go through the divorce process instead. This also meant I'd inevitably have to deal with her again, which I was dreading. Left with no other choice, I went to my parents' place to figure things out. They were really worried about me. My dad, being incredibly supportive, offered to help in any way he could. Knowing he had lots of connections, I asked if he could hook me up with a lawyer. Lucky for me, Dad is a businessman and knows a few good attorneys. He gave me the contact of a lawyer who specializes in divorce cases. It turned out my dad had already talked to him about my situation, so the lawyer was all prepped and ready to help. Dad reassured me that everything was set for a quick and straightforward divorce because the marriage hadn't been consummated. I met with the lawyer, and he was super confident about handling everything smoothly. He started on the paperwork right away and told me the divorce papers would be sent to her within a week. He also made it clear that he'd make sure I wouldn't have to pay any alimony. In fact, he was going to argue that she should pay for half of the wedding costs. When the whole wedding debacle unfolded, my dad stepped in to handle the financials, since I had paid for the entire wedding myself. That's why my lawyer is pushing to get half of those expenses back from Brenda as part of the divorce settlement. It turns out that after I left the venue, my dad also took care of the payment to the wedding planner. The situation with Brenda escalated quickly. Her parents were so upset by her actions that they left the venue immediately, essentially disowning her on the spot. Her maid of honor ended up taking her home. Meanwhile, my family, including my parents and grandparents, were left to pick up my belongings and finalize everything with the planner. When everything settled down a bit, my mom handed me the keys to my house, which Brenda had sent to my parents' house. Brenda also called my mom, apologizing for everything and asking for help to reconcile with me. However, my mom told her she wouldn't interfere and that it would be up to me to decide the future of our relationship. As for questions about my best man, well, he's been my buddy since college and we've been close for about 10 years. He moved to Seattle after we graduated, but we've kept in touch, and whenever he's back in town, we hang out like old times. He was even more excited about my wedding than I was. It's hard to imagine how everything turned so sour, considering our long history and the excitement leading up to the big day. He came down a week before the wedding to help me out with shopping and other preparations. He's always been more like family than just a friend. This wasn't the first time he had met Brenda. They'd hung out with me numerous times before whenever he visited. Honestly, I've been struggling to understand what he was thinking when he betrayed me right before the wedding. At that time, though, all I really wanted was to find some peace of mind. Brenda and I had been together for 2.5 years, and even after deciding to get married, we waited another 5 months. During all those years, I never saw any warning signs. He was always nice and respectful, never inappropriate with any of my friends, even when he was the best man. Nothing seemed off until everything fell apart. I returned to my now empty house, which felt haunted by memories. The last time I was here, we were so excited, planning our wedding and dreaming about our future. Now, everything was shattered. The next day, my mom came over and stayed with me for the next few weeks. She took care of everything Brenda had left behind and even helped renovate the place a bit. Her presence was a huge comfort during such a tough time. Clearing out the house and sorting through everything was a big help, and it gradually helped me start to feel like I was getting back in control of my life. The first proactive step I took was joining a fitness club. I figured it was better to drain all those swirling negative thoughts through intense workouts rather than let them consume me. I wasn't really out of shape before, but I was a bit chubby. Since starting my workouts, I've already lost 5 pounds, which feels great. Keeping busy has been crucial for me. When the divorce papers finally reached her, Brenda texted me asking if we could meet. It was the first time I had heard from her since the wedding day disaster. Her message broke me down all over again. I had been ignoring her, trying to act as if she didn't exist, like she was a ghost. But her text made all the emotions come flooding back. Despite everything, I agreed to meet her. She looked frail and tired. During our meeting, I kept my expression neutral, answering her questions with short, one-word responses. The conversation felt incredibly awkward. I don't even know what came over me, but I ended up bringing up the cheating, bluntly asking her how she ended up with him. It was a question that had been haunting me, and somehow, in that moment, I just needed to ask. Hearing Brenda's response was tough. She was clearly ashamed and broke down as she explained. She told me she had never cheated on me before and had never planned to. She wanted to stay loyal to me for life. But, she explained, when she shared her commitment fears with her bridesmaids, they shockingly suggested that she should have one last fling before committing to marriage. At her bachelorette party, her friends apparently told my best man that Brenda was looking for a final hookup before tying the knot. He responded casually, saying he was available, thinking it was all just playful banter. But that just set off something more serious between them. They started flirting, initially as part of the game in front of everyone else at the party. However, once they were alone, they couldn't stop themselves. Brenda told me that what was meant to be a bit of fun spiraled into them spending the night together. It happened while I was out cold from my own bachelor party. I'd gone to bed early since I needed to wake up to pick up my grandparents from the airport. Meanwhile, my best man, not yet ready to call it a night, went over to the bachelorette party. What started as a game turned into a full-blown betrayal. This revelation was a lot to process, making the situation even more painful and complicated. Brenda's confession and the unfolding of events left me questioning many things, even wondering if I should blame myself for having gone to bed early that night. But deep down, I knew that wasn't really the issue. After she finished explaining, Brenda looked at me with such sadness and asked if there was any chance we could try again, to start over. I couldn't. I told her no. I could never trust her again, and without trust, there's no foundation for a relationship. It would be futile to even try. It's hard to admit, but this whole ordeal has made me bitter towards her, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Maybe one day I'll be able to forgive her, but forgetting and trusting again is out of the question. She cried, and so did I, but I had to stay firm. In the end, she signed the divorce papers and sent them back to my lawyer. Now the divorce is final. I'm trying to move forward, taking it one day at a time. I'm focusing on my work, improving my skills, and keeping a close eye on my drinking, which had gotten worse during the divorce process. My mom thinks I should start meeting new people and dating again, but I'm not ready to jump back into the dating scene. For now, I just need time to heal and rebuild my life on my own terms. Update 2. Hello everyone, I know it's been some time since my last update here. After my divorce from Brenda, there really hasn't been much to report. We completely lost touch after she moved out. She stayed with her best friend while our divorce was finalized, and that's the last I heard about her whereabouts. I decided it was best for my healing to block her on all social media platforms. As for the guy she had the affair with, my former best man, he disappeared from my life right after the wedding. The last memory I have of him is seeing him dance with Brenda at the wedding. I assume she must have told him about the divorce, and sometimes I wondered if they ended up together. That thought bothered me for quite a while, but I've worked through those feelings of insecurity. Recently, I ran into a college friend who knew both me and the affair partner. He was actually at the wedding, too. I haven't been keeping up with anyone or even checking social media much since everything went down. This friend filled me in on some surprising news. The affair partner was cheated on and dumped by his own fiancée. It's an ironic twist, and hearing it was a strange mix of emotions. It's not something I take joy in, but it did give me a sense of closure, knowing that sometimes life has a way of balancing things out. I'm just focusing on moving forward, taking things one day at a time. That's quite the update, and it certainly adds another layer to the whole situation. It turns out a few of the groomsmen were aware of the affair between my former best man and Brenda the night before the wedding. After I locked myself in my room during the reception, they pieced together what had happened. When word of my divorce spread, it all clicked for them. My college friend, who filled me in on all of this, had lost touch with the affair partner after the wedding chaos. However, by a twist of fate, he ended up working at the same company as the affair partner. It was there that he learned about his recent engagement and its abrupt end. The affair partner had gotten engaged to a coworker, but just a day after the engagement, they split up, and the planned wedding for this month was called off. During an office party, the affair partner, having had too much to drink, confessed to my friend that his fiancée had cheated on him, which was the reason for their breakup. It's a harsh reality and an ironic twist, considering his past actions. This whole saga has been a lot to process, and hearing these developments, while shocking, does bring some strange sense of poetic justice. Now, more than ever, I'm focused on moving forward and leaving all this drama firmly in the past. The friend tried consoling me, saying that the affair partner was hit by karma because of what he had done to me. I said I had moved on from the feeling of revenge and betrayal when I was being cheated upon. I desperately wanted to ruin the affair partner's life. But now I just don't care about him or Brenda. Both are ghosts to me and don't exist for me to update the people who have read it. I'm dating this wonderful girl from my office. She's a brave single mother, mom of an adorable daughter, and I can't stop gushing over both of their cuteness and mannerisms. It's too early to say whether I want to marry her or not, but she definitely lives my life with her presence. Last month, I invited her over to my parents for dinner, and my parents just love her daughter. It was a happy sight, and I want to seal this deal. But we are both very skeptical and don't want to rush into things. We'll probably take a couple of years more before we decide to marry, if at all. Fingers crossed. But we might start living together soon. I will make an update if anything progresses. Story 2. My 43 female wife told me 46 male that she feels much safer going out with her girlfriends than with me. Are her concerns fair? My wife and I have been married for over 20 years and have a daughter away in college. Since we became empty nesters, we have been traveling a bit more and doing things. We live in the suburbs, but it's only a short trip to a big city in a bustling downtown area. I work from home doing remote work on my computer as a programmer, and she works in the city. Some nights she goes out and tries near restaurants or bars with a small group of girlfriends, and then she would recommend places she's been to for our once-a-week date nights. The issue is that she has been acting strange about us going together to some of the same places she has gone, sometimes multiple times with her girlfriends. She'd make excuses to try to downplay the experience she had when she raved about it earlier. Sometimes she's suggested doing date night at a nearby mall, which she has hated in the past. That was her date night location for many years. We drive her teen daughter to hang out at the mall, and we go to the Cheesecake Factory, or occasionally a higher-end Italian place that opened up, but it was still a chain. So I confronted her, and she said that she was trying to spare my feelings and that she feels safer being out with her girlfriends than she does with me. One of the last restaurants in the city we went to date night out was a very large homeless problem nearby, how you can't get there without encountering them. We had an encounter with one guy who would not take no for an answer, and I thought I did pretty well because it got him to eventually leave us alone. But apparently, a similar thing happened in their girl group, and one of their friends turned around and quite loudly and forcefully told him to stop following them, and he just scampered off and muttered something. Once she was getting it off her chest, he seemed apologetic, but then almost angry because I guess he was bottling it up for a long time. She then told me that she never felt comfortable with me traveling with her daughter last year to her new college to move in and get settled in. But since I was able to work remotely, it was easier for me to go. She held her tongue about how she felt to spare my feelings. She told me that the only way she felt good about it was knowing that her daughter took a woman's self-defense course and that she knew what to look out for. While I always look like a tourist in new places, I got defensive and told her that I traveled for work to cities around the world that were more dangerous than America, including India. She then immediately said that I was with a group and now you have to see my point. She asked how I'd feel if we went as a couple to India, and I said I'd feel responsible for her safety. She said, that is how she feels about me when we go out, when she is with me alone. She feels responsible for me because she loves me, not because she thinks I'm a coward and would run away, but simply that this is something that she does better at than I do. She said that she wants to relax when she goes out and not be responsible for someone. She doesn't feel that way, or with her girlfriends at all. She knew this would crush me to hear it, so she tried to avoid it. She said that she is more used to the city, more used to dealing with sketchy-looking men, more aware of their surroundings, and frankly more capable of fighting if it came to that. That last one really shocked me. But I've never been in a fight. I've gotten bullied and beaten up in the past, but I was never in a fight. She has 5 boys back when she was in school and held her own. She's also very much into working out and fitness, and I sat at a computer for work and have to work long hours. I go to the gym sometimes, and the one thing that I have going for me is that I am tall, but I've never been able to put on much muscle or build strength. I love to hear from women in a similar situation as my wife. You may feel that you're more capable than your husband or boyfriend, and how do you handle it? And do you think my wife is overreacting or being fair? It hurt my pride, but I can also see her point to it makes me want to do better at making her more confident in me. But realistically, my work schedule is super crazy right now. ETA. Came back to look at the responses after being away today, and it's insane. The number of people who immediately assume she must be cheating. And this is all some elaborate excuse. It makes no sense. There are easier ways for someone to conceal cheating than all of this, if that is what she wanted to do. What a toxic place this is. Just all the same. You might want to double check your wife and make sure that she's not cheating on you, my friend. Women are attracted to men that make them feel safe. And it doesn't sound like you're making her feel safe, so you might want to double check everything. Newlywed wife hooked up with her ex, so I left town and never went back. Now let's get into this story and see what it's all about. What I'm about to discuss happened to me exactly 6 years ago this month. He says it was May. Whenever the day comes up on the calendar, I dread it every year around this time. I start getting flashbacks, and it's a real downer for me. On the morning of D-Day, my life was at an all-time high, but by midnight, I had sunk to my lowest point. I was a defeated man who felt as if his life was over. I'll now explain how everything began between me and my ex. I was a junior in college when I met the woman who, 15 months later, I would make my wife. Are you kidding me? You're still in college and you meet this woman, and then 15 months later, you're marrying her. What could go wrong? For this, I'll call her Vicky and call myself Anthony, like me. Vicky was a junior, and we met while studying at the campus library. We immediately hit it off, and I knew right away something big was in store for us. We kissed on our second date, but things didn't progress to third base until we had been dating for 3 weeks. And we didn't go all the way until 5 weeks after that. So this guy waited almost 2 months to get the good stuff, which, as you know, is very unusual in today's modern society. Prior to getting together, we each had just one previous partner. Are you sure about that? I had a brief but passionate relationship with a woman when I was 18, while Vicky had a serious relationship with a guy that lasted over 5 years. Now I put up a yellow sign here just to say caution. This woman is only what, 21? Maybe she's 22 years old and she's been in a relationship prior to meeting you with a guy for 5 years. Oh, that's a dangerous situation there because that guy, I'm sure, imprinted on her. He says, keep this in mind for later. In my previous relationship, we both were each other's first, and we dated about 6 months before drifting apart. She was a partier who liked to drink and smoke grass, and I just wasn't into that lifestyle. As for Vicky, her relationship was quite serious, and she and her then boyfriend were on their way to getting married before she discovered he had been cheating on her when she was at college. Not only that, the girl he was cheating on her with got pregnant and he broke up with Vicky and married his pregnant AP. I was the first guy she dated after that relationship ended. I guess you could say I was her rebound lover. Whatever the situation that brought us together, we felt deeply in love. And I quickly envisioned our future together and wanted to take the next step. So after dating for just 7 months, I asked Vicky to marry me and she said yes. Of course, that's a big mistake. My parents lost their mind when I told them. My dad specifically told me we were too young and didn't even have jobs yet. Yes, Dad, you nailed it. I promised my parents we would not get married until after we both graduated and found work. This calmed them down a bit, but they still tried to dissuade me right up to our wedding day. After that, they just went along with it and accepted that this thing was going to happen against their wishes. I kept my promise to my parents, and we didn't set the wedding date until we both had jobs. As for Vicky's parents, they were all for us getting married. They saw me as a great guy and totally different than the guy Vicky dated before. So this guy she dated before, what I'm reading into this was likely a bad boy. When it came time for planning the wedding, they paid for everything, including our honeymoon in the Bahamas. When it came to my job choice, Dad wasn't happy with me here either. Instead of taking a job paying more money in the metro area where I grew up, I accepted a job 230 miles away in a rural community near Vicky's hometown. So this guy is following this woman. And this is something you don't want to do as a man. The job didn't pay as well, but Vicky had already secured a job in her field in her hometown, so I thought this was a good compromise. My dad explained to me, when it comes to his vocation, a man shouldn't compromise. He said it was never good for a man to follow a woman. It should be the other way around. He said if a woman truly loves a man, she will follow him to the end of the earth. His dad sounds like a strong man with traditional values. I told Dad things are different today than when he and Mom grew up, explaining why women are viewed as equals when it comes to careers and working again here. My parents were disappointed, but accepted that I was now an adult making my own decisions. The wedding day came, and it was great. We were married in the church. Vicky's family attended and had a big reception afterwards. There were over 180 people there, of which about 40 consisted of my family and friends, and the rest were Vicky's people. After we got back from our honeymoon, we settled into our jobs, and things were going well. We moved into a newly built 2-bedroom apartment in Vicky's hometown and spent the next few weeks furnishing and decorating it like we wanted. Vicky's job was less than a half-mile from our apartment, and some days she would walk to work while mine was 16 miles away. The drive was a straight shot and only took about 25 minutes, 30 tops, so I didn't mind it. In fact, I liked the drive as it gave me time to unwind before getting home. Since I didn't have friends there, my whole world centered around Vicky, my job, and her family and friends. Now that is a big mistake, as we've talked about in other videos, because as you can see, this guy is building his whole world around this woman, and you don't want to do that. That didn't bother me, though, as I was busy working 60 hours a week, and I really like Vicky's family and her friends. They're all good people, and I don't have one negative thing to say about any of them, even today. Every month, Vicky and her closest friends would meet for dinner and talk on these nights. She'd get home by 7:30 or 8 at the latest. He says, hold this thought for later, too. These were her girls' nights, but not the typical kind we guys think about. Instead, these ladies actually met to eat and talk, nothing else. At about the 9-month mark of our marriage, things were going well, and we decided it was time to start a family. Vicky went off birth control, and we amped up things in the bedroom using techniques we read about to help increase the chances of conceiving. A couple months went by and no baby yet, but we were sure having fun trying. I imagine you're probably reading what I've written so far, thinking this guy's life sounds pretty good. Well, it was right up to D-Day. I'll now skip forward to that day. It was a Wednesday, and Vicky and 3 of her girlfriends planned to meet up at a local restaurant for their monthly get-together. They met after work, and I stopped by the restaurant on my way home to talk with them a bit and to pick up the takeout order. Vicky placed for me. It was an Italian place that made my favorite lasagna and homemade Italian bread. After leaving the restaurant, I went straight home and devoured the food. It was great, as always. Shortly after I finished eating, I got a call from Vicky. What does she want, I wonder? She said after dinner, she and her friends were going to go to one of her friends' homes to continue talking. If that was all right, I said, sure, I'll see you when you get here. She told me she'd be home around 9 o'clock or so. I said, okay. We said, I love yous, and ended the call. After that, I plopped on the couch to relax and turned on the TV, being exhausted from work and with a belly full of carbs. I dozed off and didn't wake up until a couple of hours later after having a bizarre nightmare. In this dream, Vicky and I were driving down a mountainous road with lots of twists and turns when she asked me to stop the car. When I did, she got out of the car and walked over to the edge of the road. When she got to the edge, she turned around, looked at me with a strange grin and said, "Goodbye, Anthony." I tried getting out of the car and going to her, but it felt like I was locked in the driver's seat and couldn't move. The seat and shoulder belts felt like they weighed pound 500 and I couldn't budge them. When I looked up again, she was gone. I screamed no and then woke up. When I did, I found myself slumped on the couch, staring at the TV. I realized it was all just a bad dream, but it really freaked me out. I then noticed it was after 9:30 and Vicky still wasn't home. At that point, I thought her get-together must have run over a bit. I decided to call her, though, just to hear her voice and to tell her about the crazy dream I just had. I dialed and the call went straight to voicemail. I waited 15 minutes and called again and got the same. I also texted her a couple of times and got no reply. I then started to worry. Vicky never turned off her phone and was never late for anything. She'd also text me multiple times when she was out, but that night I hadn't heard from her since. She called me to say she'd be a little late. I decided next to call her best friend. Who? I'll call Lori. Lori is a nice woman, and I'd become good friends with her and her husband. I called Lori and she answered. I told her I was trying to get in touch with Vicky but couldn't reach her. I said I was just calling to check how much longer they were going to be. Lori was silent for a moment and then asked, "What do you mean?" After I explained, Lori said she knew nothing about an after-dinner get-together and that everyone left the restaurant around 7:30. Hearing this, my heart sunk and I started to panic. I thought something terrible may have happened to Vicky, and the dream I had was some sort of omen. Lori said, "Let me try to call her." She put me on hold a few minutes and came back and said she was getting her voicemail too. Lori then said she was going to call around to the other ladies who were at the dinner to see if they knew anything and call me back after I got off the phone with Lori. I called Vicky's mom and asked if she was there. She said no and inquired as to why I thought she was. I told her, and like me, she panicked and called out to her husband and handed him the phone. I then explained the same to him while he and I were talking. Vicky's mom tried calling her, but the calls were still going to voicemail. Not knowing what else to do, I told them I was going to get in my car and drive around to see if I could locate her car. The town is not that big, so I thought there was a good chance I'd locate her. Her dad said he and my mother-in-law would do the same, as we were all very worried at that point. I first drove down the main street and by the restaurant, but didn't see anything. I then headed over to the shopping center, which has a couple of bars and restaurants that stay open, later. But again, nothing. While I was driving around, I got a call from Lori. She said she talked to everyone who was at the dinner and they hadn't seen or talked to Vicky since leaving the restaurant. I wonder where she is. After frantically driving around for about 30 minutes, I spotted Vicky's car on a residential side street. I pulled in behind it and called Vicky's parents and then called Lori. And they all came right over to join me. Lori arrived first, and I asked her if she knew anyone on the street. Before she had a chance to answer, Vicky's parents turned down the street and drove past us. As I waved to them, they drew further up the street and pulled over in front of a house. They got out and headed right up to the front door. I started to walk towards the house when Lori grabbed me by the shirt and told me to wait a minute as I turned to face her. I could hear my in-laws knocking on the door and yelling at someone to open up. Lori had a sad look on her face and told me she knew who lived there. She paused and told me the house belonged to Vicky's ex-boyfriend. I'll call him Ron. She said he and his wife and young daughter lived there. At first, it didn't register with me, but then I quickly realized the implication Vicky was cheating on me with that Lori. And I walked towards the house, and while we were still about 20 yards away, the front porch light came on, and I saw a man open the screen door. My father-in-law was yelling at him and trying to move past him into the house with my mother-in-law right behind him, screaming at the guy. They were both very loud, and one of the neighbors came running over from across the street to see what was going on. The next thing I saw was Vicky moving past the guy and onto the porch. Her parents shouted at her, asking, "How could she do such a thing?" Vicky then looked over and saw me and Lori. She called out my name and started running towards me. I was on the verge of breaking down and didn't know what else to do, so I sprinted to my car and drove away. My adrenaline was so high. I can't describe the feeling, and I was really in shock. I just started driving around town like a zombie with no destination in mind, and my phone started ringing. After driving about 10 minutes, I found myself at the exit ramp for the interstate out on the edge of town. I was going to make a U-turn and head back home, but instead decided to get on the highway and drive a while longer to clear my head. Before I knew it, I had driven for an hour and was nearly 70 miles away. I got off the highway to use the bathroom and planned to turn around and go home. When I got back in my car, I turned out of the parking lot and made a last-minute decision to keep driving west instead of going back home. I was still in a bad place and in no condition to talk to anyone. I ended up driving another 2 hours to the outskirts of a major city. By this time, it was nearly 3 a.m., and I was mentally and physically exhausted. So I pulled into a truck stop and fell asleep in my car. I was awoken by voices. A few hours later, as two truckers walked by my car into the store. At first, I forgot where I was and what happened last night, but then quickly remember, I again had to use the restroom. So I went back into the store and got a large coffee before getting back in my car. I checked my messages, and as expected, I had multiple calls and texts from Vicky, her parents, and even Lori. Instead of calling one of them, I first called my boss and told him what I was dealing with and asked for a few days off. He told me to feel free to use all my PTO, my paid time off if I needed to, and to keep him posted. I next called my parents to tell them they were disgusted and concerned about my well-being. My dad then said, "We tried to tell you, but you wouldn't listen." He said, "You need to divorce the baby now. See, Dad's not playing around, and this guy should have been listening to his dad from day one, but he didn't." After I finished talking to my parents, I texted Vicky's dad and told him I had left town for a while, but I was okay. He texted me back and said he was glad I was safe and to call him when I got the chance. I responded, telling him I would, but it may take a few days as I just wasn't up to it. I then listened and read all the messages. Vicky left me the messages and her text confirmed she cheated. All the messages were of her apologizing and saying she made a terrible mistake, and it's something she'll never do again. As I listen and read all the messages, each one became progressively more desperate. This gave me some sort of twisted pleasure. I have to admit, at the moment, she went from the person I love most in the world to someone I hated. I mean, really hated. I called my parents back and told them I was going to stay in the city where I was for a few days. They asked me to come to their place. I told them I needed to be alone, to think things through, but would keep in touch. I assured them I was fine and not to worry. I said I was in no danger of doing something stupid. I then spent the next 2 days exploring the city and thinking about my next steps. By the end of the second day, I had made 3 key life decisions. First, I decided I wanted to divorce Vicky. Second, I didn't want to see or speak to her ever again, if I could avoid it. And third, I didn't want to ever set foot in that town again. I first had to address my job situation before doing anything else. I called my boss and told him of my plans and asked if there was an opportunity for me to transfer. I explained that if not, I would be submitting my notice as I didn't want to go anywhere near the town where my wife lived. He understood my dilemma and came up with an idea. He explained that the store manager for one of our urban stores had just been terminated. He said he'd love to have me take over the store and turn it around without hesitation. I told him I'd take the job. He told me before accepting the position, I should first go there to check it out. I agreed and drove the 3 hours to the location and checked into a nearby hotel. That evening, I went to a mall and bought myself several $100s worth of clothes and proper shoes. As I left town that fateful night with just the clothes on my back, I then went back and washed all the clothes at the hotel laundry. The next morning, I went out to explore the community where the store was located. It was a rough neighborhood. I mean, really rough. I checked the crime stats for the area and they were off the charts. Bad. After driving around a while, I parked in the store parking lot and just watched customers going in and out. I then went into the store to check things out. I noticed the employees were all very nice, but in desperate need of training. I went back to my car and thought about it. I decided to take the job and called my boss to tell him. That afternoon, we completed the paperwork, and 3 days later, I started working at the store. That night, I called my parents and told them my plans, and they were immediately against it. My dad suggested I put in my notice and come back home and get a job there. He said there were hundreds of openings throughout the metro area offering better pay that were in safe neighborhoods. I told my dad I understood his concern, but said I wanted to stay with the company and working for my boss as I've been treated very well since the day I started. The following day, I called several attorneys back in the county where Vicky lived. I selected one and paid the $1,500 retainer fee on my credit card. I also gave him my wife's contact information. I told him I didn't want to speak to her again and asked that he call to inform her of my intentions. Vicky had been trying to reach me nonstop since I left, but I never responded. That's smart because, like I've said over and over, going no contact is the best way to handle these situations. My attorney called her right after he got off the phone with me, then called me back after he spoke with her. He said she was hysterical and said she didn't want a divorce and just wanted to speak with me. He said he finished the call by suggesting she secure legal counsel and advised her that all communications were to go through him. He said she screamed no and hung up on him. After I spoke with the attorney, I called Vicky's dad and explained to him my decision. I told him I had relocated to another state over 400 miles away and was in the process of filing for divorce. He paused for a moment and was silent, but then spoke up in a broken voice and said he was disappointed and sad. He explained he wasn't disappointed with me, but he was disappointed and ashamed of his daughter. Her dad actually told me that he and his wife selfishly would like me to stay married to Vicky, but said I was doing the right thing by divorcing her. Now that's unusual for a girl's dad to side with the guy, but in this case, this guy did. So I gave him a thumbs up for that. He told me to do what I needed to do and to not worry. He said they would make sure Vicky is cared for. He then asked if I wanted him to arrange to have my clothing and furniture shipped somewhere. I told him no, stating I didn't want anything from the apartment. I then told him I would pay the final 2 months' rent on the lease, and he told me to forget about it and that Vicky would pay. He said it was the least she could do for me after what she'd done. I thanked him, and for the first time I broke down. I thanked him for being so good to me as a foolish young man who stole his daughter away. He told me I was the best thing that ever happened to her. He said she realizes that now, but it's too late. He wished me well and told me to keep in touch. That was the last time I spoke with anyone from Vicky's family, until I had to go back 7 months later for the hearing. I was hoping to not have to appear in person, but my attorney said I had to, since Vicky didn't voluntarily agree to our terms. It's not that she was looking to get anything from me financially. She was just holding out, trying to get me back. Right up to the morning of the hearing, Vicky left me voicemail messages and sent me text begging for a second chance. She even sent me 3 handwritten letters. I never responded to any of them. While I initially had deep hatred towards her at the hearing, I just felt pity for her. I wanted to avoid seeing Vicky and her family before the hearing, so my attorney and I walked in with just 5 minutes to spare. Vicky looked at me with tears in her eyes and waved. I'm just not in my head. During the hearing, her attorney told the judge that it was his client's wish that they attend counseling as the only thing she wanted to do was to reconcile and continue on with the marriage. My attorney had warned me this was a possible risk. However, to our surprise, the judge said that it was obvious that I wasn't interested in reconciliation as I had moved out of state to confirm. He asked my attorney, and my attorney said, "That is correct, Your Honor." He told the judge I had moved out of state and started a new job. He said my only ask of the court was to finalize the divorce equitably, since the state has at fault divorce laws, and Vicky acknowledged her infidelity. The hearing was quick, and the divorce was made final. After the hearing, I spoke to Vicky in the presence of my attorney. She was crying and told me she was sorry and came in for a hug. Though I didn't want to, I hugged her and told her I wish her and her parents nothing but the best. I then embraced her parents and left. That was it. The marriage and life that once had so much promise ended nearly as quickly as it began. It's now 6 years later, and while I'm still single, I've been in a committed relationship with a great girl for the past 2 years. Neither of us are high on marriage, but we do plan to stay together forever and want to have kids in the near future. When that happens, we'll move in together so they're still not even living with each other. As for Vicky, last I heard, she now lives with a divorced guy who has several adult children. From what I was told, he's in his early 50s and used to be a neighbor of hers when she grew up. Apparently, her parents aren't happy about it, as Vicky was friends with this guy's oldest daughter when they were growing up. Because of this, her relationship with her parents has become further strained. How do I know all this? Lori told me. I've remained friends with Lori and her husband, and we're connected on Book. About a year ago, she and her husband were in my area, and my girlfriend and I met them for dinner. Lori also told me that Vicky's old boyfriend, the one she cheated on me with, is still with his wife, but they both cheat on each other. Once a cheater, always a cheater, as they say. She said they split up for a year, during which time his wife had a baby with another guy, and he and Vicky dated on and off for a while. Oh my goodness. The guy and his wife have since reconciled and had another child. The AP says what a bunch of sick, dysfunctional people. I'm so glad I got out of that situation when I did, or I'd still be a part of that mess, he says. Be careful out there, gentlemen. And that's the end of his story. And I thought it was a great story. Now, he made a lot of mistakes right up front. He rushed right into marriage. He married young. He followed his woman to her hometown, which is a big mistake. But I have to hand it to the guy. Once he found out she was cheating on him, he got out of town and left her like Speed Racer. Man, he got out of there so fast she didn't even get a chance to explain herself. And then he immediately filed for divorce. So I think he handled that like a boss. And now I want to cover what I think are the morals of this story. The first one, alpha widows, are not relationship material and definite not marriage material. An awful widow, like I said, up front, is somebody who has been imprinted on by a strong male. And typically those males have broken up with them for some reason. And those women never get over those guys. So when you're dealing with women like that, you got to tread very lightly, guys. Next, rushing into marriage at any age, especially when you are young, is a very risky proposition. That goes without saying. Next, a man should never follow a woman. A woman should always follow a man. Now, if I got women out there today listening to me, I know that's going to be controversial, but I'm telling you guys, it never seems to work out well when a guy follows his woman. Next, when cheating happens, just end it. I've said this over and over, and I'll keep saying it in every video. Do not try to rebuild the relationship or try again. It just never works. Next, no contact is always the best approach. And you saw that very clearly in this story. Next, living a great life is the best possible revenge because I guarantee this Vicky is still following what this guy is doing, and she's probably seeing, wow, this guy is doing well in his career. Oh man, he's got a new hot girlfriend. And that could have been me. We could have been building our family now. We could have been getting on with our lives and living a great life. And here I am now living with this 50-year-old divorcee who's got 3 adult children. I mean, she can't be happy. And then finally, marriage is not necessary in order to have a successful relationship or a family. Many men think you have to get married in order to have a successful relationship and build a family. You don't. However, you still need to be cautious with that and plan everything out and make sure everything is specified before you jump into any kind of relationship like that. But you can have a successful relationship and build a family without getting married. So, those are my thoughts. And now I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story? How do you think this guy handled it? Would you have done something different? Tell us about it in the comments. Also, be sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel, and I will talk to you on the next one. On my 18th B-Day, parents told me they spent 95% of my trust fund on my golden sisters and left me to pay for my collage, so I ghosted them. And now after I became rich, they want back into my life. So here's the deal. I'm a 25-year-old guy, and I happen to be the youngest kid in our family. I've got 2 older sisters who are 33 and 31 now, We all grew up in a family that owns a grocery store. This isn't just any store. It's been in our family for generations, coming from my dad's side. Both my mom, who is 63, and my dad, who is 60, are the bosses of the store. It's a pretty cool family tradition. Now, my grandparents were pretty awesome. They set up college trust funds for each of us. We're talking $100,000 each. That's a lot of money, right? The idea was to help us pay for college so we could get our degrees without worrying about the cost. Unfortunately, things didn't go according to plan for my sisters. Both of them ended up spending all their money way too fast and didn't finish their college education. Now, they're both single moms and have come back to work at the family grocery store. They have 3 little kids, my nieces, who are super cute but a handful. As for me, I chose a bit of a different path. While I love the family business, I wanted to try something on my own. So I didn't work at the store. Instead, I got a job as a landscaper, working during the summers and after school throughout my high school years. It was hard work, but it paid off. I saved up around $20,000 from those jobs. When I got into college on a partial scholarship, I was beyond excited. I mean, this was my chance to make something big of myself. I saw it as an opportunity to finish college without any debt hanging over my head, and I even started dreaming about owning my own place by the time I was 22. That's the dream, right? So just like my sisters did when they turned 18, I asked my parents if I could take control of my trust fund. I wanted to manage the money myself, just like they had the chance to do. It felt like stepping up and taking responsibility for my own future, you know? So my parents said we needed to have a serious talk about the trust fund and planned to discuss it at dinner. When dinner time rolled around, the whole house was buzzing. My nieces were there too, adding to the usual chaos. Once we all settled down, the conversation turned to my trust fund. That's when things got pretty heavy. My parents, looking pretty serious, dropped a bombshell. They asked me if I could wait another 2 years before accessing my trust fund because they had used a big chunk of the money. Turns out, they needed it to cover some really urgent stuff, healthcare and living costs for my nieces, and a huge legal bill from a DUI lawsuit that my sister Gloria got tangled up in. Curious, and a bit shocked, I asked how much was left of the $100,000. My mom hesitated before telling me there was only about $5,000 left. Yeah, you heard that right. $95,000 was gone, and none of that money had gone to me. My dad then tried to smooth things over. He said they really needed me to think about the family and understand why they had to ask for my help. I couldn't help but feel a mix of frustration and disbelief. I thought about how my sisters, Gloria and Lori, had used their trust funds to go to college and even travel around the world. Meanwhile, here I was, being asked to foot the bill for their mistakes with my own trust fund. Feeling pretty upset, I told my family that this wasn't just a simple request. They had already made the decision without me. With that, I decided it was time to move out and live on my own. I still went to college, thanks to the partial scholarship I had earned. But yeah, that dinner changed a lot of things for me. Over the years, I put the money I had saved up to good use by starting my own landscaping business. It really took off, and now I'm employing 6 guys, and we're doing pretty well. Unfortunately, I never got to use any of the money my grandparents originally set aside for me in the trust fund. Despite everything, my parents never managed to replenish it. A couple of years ago, I had my lawyer send a formal request to check the trust fund, and it turned out there was even less money than my parents had mentioned. Only $3,456.13, not the $5,000 they initially told me about. Despite their attempts to mend things, my relationship with my family remained strained. Over the years, they've tried to reconnect by sending gifts, letters, and invitations, but I've returned every single one. It's been tough, to say the least. Now, there's a new chapter in my life. I'm getting married next month. My fiancée really wants to meet my family. She believes it's important to try to close this chapter on a positive note. She's encouraging me to forgive and move on, especially since it's been years since I last spoke to them. My fiancé's perspective is making me consider the possibility of reconciliation. She thinks it's essential for us to start our new life together without any lingering bitterness or unresolved issues from the past. This situation is making me think a lot about family, forgiveness, and how to move forward. But am I in the wrong for telling my fiancé? Sorry, but I cannot move on from this. Now for the top comment before the update. Tell your fiancé you love what she's trying to do, but you were robbed $100,000 and they ceased being worthy of the term family when they come back with repayment plus interest. Then the reconciliation can begin. Why didn't you sue the trustees of the estate? You really should have. There's a lot of stigma against calling the law family. Opie's mad, but it doesn't sound like he's interested in suing his parents. This is an extremely common reaction here. Sue your parents. Since your parents to jail, call the cops on your parents. But most people want their parents to come clean and be accountable for their actions rather than send their 70-year-old mom two presents across a blankets with skulls on them. Someone steals 100K from me. No way they get to stay in my life. You are all adults. Obviously, this is just my opinion, but that is more than enough reason to not trust these people in your life. You won't ever get that money back. And the fact that the amount now has gone down instead of up when they promise to eventually pay you back says that they also lied to you. Good on you for moving on without them and doing well. You did enough for them without your consent already. Update. I've been really firm about not forgiving my family, my sisters, and my parents, until they pay me back the inheritance they basically used for themselves. This whole mess has been a huge part of my life for a while now. Then, out of the blue, I find out my fiancée has been secretly chatting with them on Facebook Messenger. It doesn't stop there. She actually met them at a restaurant about a month ago. She didn't tell me any of this until recently. When she finally shared what happened, she mentioned that their meeting was super emotional. Honestly, I was really upset that she kept all this from me for a whole month. When I confronted her, she said she was scared to tell me sooner. She thought I might end things and call off our wedding if I knew she was talking to my family. She even planned to wait until after our wedding to tell me everything. But then, just yesterday, my mom called her directly. She was really laying it on thick, begging her to help mend things between me and the rest of them. She talked about how she's missed so much of my life already and doesn't want to miss my wedding too. Now, here's my fiancé, who's just dropped this bombshell on me and is giving me the most heartfelt, tear-jerking apology I've ever heard. She's asking me to forgive her. This whole situation has really thrown me for a loop. I'm trying to process all of this and figure out where we go from here. So here's where things got even more intense. My fiancé, realizing how much she messed up by hiding her talks with my family, brought in her own parents to help smooth things over. Her dad, who's really taken me under his wing, even has a picture of just the two of us in his office, which is kind of funny. He's always introducing me as his son and genuinely broke down, saying he didn't want to lose me as a son over this. I couldn't stay mad after seeing how much it affected him, so I decided to forgive my fiancé. But just when I thought we could move past this, my sisters showed up at my business, my nieces in tow, hoping to clear the air. They admitted they regretted how they handled the trust fund situation and wanted to rebuild our relationship. They knew I was angry, but they missed having me in their lives. My nieces even asked why I wasn't around anymore, wondering if I was mad at them. Then, my sisters dropped another bombshell. This whole mess with the trust fund had really torn our parents apart. Turns out my mom had used most of the money without my dad even knowing. When he found out, she tried to get him to cover for her, suggesting they tell me they both decided to use the money. She thought if I believed it was a joint decision, I might forgive them eventually. But if I knew it was all her doing, she feared I'd never forgive her. She was always worried I thought she played favorites with us. Hearing all this, I had to take a step back and think about everything. My relationship with my fiancé, the unexpected truth about my parents, and my sisters wanting to reconnect. It's a lot to process, and I'm just trying to figure out the best way to handle all these revelations and feelings. Honestly, if my mom hadn't tried to cover it up with my dad's help, I would have cut ties completely. When my mom drained my trust fund, she pleaded with my dad to pretend it was a joint decision. My dad was livid, but he went along with it to try to keep the peace. Now, he's really bitter because this whole mess has wrecked his relationship with me. He even hears from his buddies about how great I get along with my father-in-law. Speaking of my father-in-law, we're pretty close. I even call him Dad, and he calls me his son. My dad shared all of this with my mom and laid it out straight. She needs to fix this mess, or their marriage is over. He's also been upfront with me about what really went down. I had a heart-to-heart with my sisters, too. I told them I love them and my nieces and that I don't hate them. But I had to be honest about how their actions, however indirectly, robbed me of something precious. Our grandparents left us that money to give us each a boost, a final parting gift, and because of what happened, I missed out on the experiences my sisters enjoyed. It felt like they'd stolen that last gift from me. We all ended up crying. I accepted their apologies because I believe they're genuinely sorry, but I also let them know I'm struggling to let go of my resentment. The path to rebuilding our relationship is going to be a long one, and they need to understand that. It's going to take time, and I can't just pretend everything's okay overnight. I decided to have a one-on-one meeting with just my dad, specifically requesting that my mom not be involved. When we met up, I could immediately tell he was taken aback by my request. He looked really worn out, almost defeated. Before we even really started, he asked if he could speak first. My dad confessed that he's been struggling with depression for the past few years and feels like he's completely failed me. He acknowledged that he betrayed my trust and said that the guilt of that, feeling like he's the reason his own son hates him, is something he'll carry with him forever. Then, he mentioned how jealous he was of the relationship I have with my father-in-law. It was too much for him and he just broke down, crying nonstop for several minutes. Once he had a moment to gather himself, I told him I knew it was actually Mom who had decided to use the money. I expressed that I understood why he didn't want to blame her outright, but his decision to cover for her hurt me deeply. Despite everything, I told him I still loved him and made it clear that he didn't owe me anything anymore. I wanted him to know that he wasn't responsible for carrying Mom's mistakes as his own burden any longer. We both ended up breaking down and shared a long emotional hug that lasted for about 5 minutes. It felt like a moment of real understanding and forgiveness between us. Wanting to take a step towards healing our family, I invited him, along with my sisters and my nieces, to have dinner at my place that night. I made it clear that Mom wouldn't be part of this dinner. It was a chance for us to start rebuilding our bonds, just the rest of us, without the complications my mom's actions had introduced. I made it very clear to my sisters and dad about the ground rules for the dinner. If they brought my mom along, it would be the last time we spoke. My mom, figuring out that she was being left out of this family reunion, tried to reach out. I turned down her request to talk and laid out my terms bluntly. If you want to talk to me, bring a check for $100K. With my wedding just a month away, I've invited everyone except my mom. My sisters are pushing for me to listen to my mom's side of the story, especially now that my dad has stopped covering for her decisions. My fiancée, who's just been through her own round of forgiveness with me, is happy and supports my decision completely. Even though I know she'd like me to meet with my mom, she's not pressing the issue. She understands where I stand and doesn't want to push too hard, given everything that's just happened. So should I meet with my mom before or after she hands me the check for $100,000? Now for the top comment. Wow, it kind of seems like your sisters use their kids to manipulate you into feeling guilty for leaving. Yet in all this time, no one has saved the diner. Repay you? Look, I get it. They are wearing you down. Stand firm. They took the money. They can all chip in and pay it back. They are not disabled. They can work. Don't let them apologize without making amends. And they're still on your mom's side. That's why they want you to hear her out. My advice? Slow way down. It's it. Them years to break your relationship. Don't rush into mending it. I'd rethink the wedding. Invite. You went too easy on your sisters. They are all guilty. The same as mom. They burned through the money. Do you think your mom gave it without them nagging your dad and nieces are innocent? But your sisters were not 12 when they knew they would rob you of your life. You had to work your butt off because they used stuff left for you. And now they got to bail out. The only good person in this scenario is your dad and nieces. Children are innocent. I would only invite dad and nieces, literally, and skip on sisters and mom if I were you. You do realize that every one of them is manipulating you, right? You see, your family are throwing your mother under the bus for something they all had a part in. It wasn't just her idea while they were throwing away your $100K still now, because they want to be at your wedding. It's suddenly all her idea, and they wanted no part in it. Suspicious, don't you think the person you are going to marry guilt trips you and manipulated you into staying? She wasn't thinking about you when she contacted your family. She was thinking only of herself. So here's what's going on. My son Holden, my partner's daughter Sophia, and another kid Alan are all part of this story. I'm planning to get married next year, which is super exciting. But figuring out who to invite to the wedding is a bit tricky. Initially, I thought it would just be adults at the wedding, with the only kid being my son Holden. I mean, it's our big day, so I figured our own kids should definitely be there, but maybe not other family kids like nieces and nephews. But here's the twist. Our nieces are a big part of our life because they live really close by. We often look after them when their mom, my sister-in-law, needs someone to watch them. So my partner thought it would be nice to have Sophia and Alan at the wedding too. I guess it makes sense because having kids at weddings is kind of a traditional thing. I thought about it and felt maybe Holden could use some company, and since he's good friends with Sophia, why not have her there? But Alan often gets moody, cries a lot, and can start little arguments with other kids, which then leads to more crying, especially when she's told off. Honestly, dealing with that on a normal day is okay, but on my wedding day, I'd rather not. So I made up my mind and told my partner that it would be better to not have either girl at the wedding if having both meant dealing with tantrums. But Holden really wanted Sophia to come. After some back and forth, my partner and I agreed that only Sophia would come to the wedding, and that's where we landed, planning a mostly adult wedding, but with Holden and Sophia as the kids who get to be part of our special day. So to make things fair, we're thinking of spending some special time with just Alan on another day. But to be honest, I'm a bit worried about how my sister-in-law might react to the wedding plans. Alan has a history of getting upset really easily, especially around Holden and Sophia. She often ends up starting some kind of argument with them and then ends up crying. I just want the wedding day to go smoothly, and I know Holden and Sophia will behave well. Holden even specifically asked for Sophia to be there. I've suggested to her mom that getting some help might be good, but ultimately I'm not Alan's mom, so there's only so much I can say or do. I'm just super tired at this point. We've been looking after her for 4 weeks of the 6-week holiday, and it's always been pretty intense since she was about 2 years old. So am I the idiot? Now for the top comment. You are the idiot, and a solid one. They're sisters. You can't include one and not the other. And how can you explain to them that you'll allow just one? She will forever remember. And this will forever cause problems in the family. If I were her mother, I'd not allow one without the other. I had never allowed my kid to be singled out, ostracized, and uninvited. Screw your desire to have a playmate for your son at your wedding. You are the idiot. How exactly were you planning on telling your family this? Oh, nothing personal, but only one of your kids can come because I think your other one is just bratty. Did you think that would go over well? Also, it kind of sounds like you play favorites with them. Maybe the other child acts up around you because she knows you like her sister better than her. Also, they're your partner's family, so if they want them at their wedding, they're allowed to have their relatives too. Poor Alan. Imagine being told that you can't go to your uncle's wedding, but your sister's allowed. This could seriously affect her mental health long term. If I were her mother, my whole family wouldn't come. If you're going to exclude one of us, OP, think long and hard about this and all the potential damage this can cause. Story 3. So, I'm an 18-year-old girl, and about a month ago, I decided to start therapy because I've been struggling with some eating issues and other personal stuff. Going into therapy, I had my own set of worries, but I was hopeful that it could really help me out. When I started my sessions, my therapist began doing some things that made me feel pretty uneasy, but I wasn't sure if it was just all part of the therapy process. For one, she talked a lot about how I looked. Almost every session, she'd ask me to stand up and point out parts of my body that I didn't like about myself. Then, she'd compare those parts to her own body, which made me feel really uncomfortable and self-conscious. It was strange because I went there to get better, not to feel worse about how I look. Initially, I tried not to make a big deal out of it. After all, my dad was paying for these sessions, and maybe this was just her way of trying to help me see things differently. However, it kept bothering me that we focused so much on my appearance instead of digging deeper into the real problems I was facing. Then, something happened that I just couldn't ignore. During a recent session, my therapist asked me to do something that felt way too personal and inappropriate. She wanted me to stand up and actually lift up my shirt. That was the moment I realized this wasn't right. It crossed a line for me. I didn't even ask why she wanted me to do that. Instead, I told her straight up that she was making me uncomfortable, and I left the room right then and there. I stopped at the front desk on my way out to let them know why I was leaving so abruptly. I felt they should be aware that something uncomfortable happened, not just for me, but in case this was a recurring issue with other clients. After leaving, I drove home and ended up having a conversation with my dad about everything. He was pretty upset, but not with the therapist, at me. He thought I should have come to him first with my concerns before quitting the therapy sessions. He said I could have just refused the therapist's request instead of leaving and that talking to him should have been my first step, especially since he was the one paying for these sessions. Now I'm sitting with all these mixed feelings. I'm relieved I stood up for myself and left, but I'm also second-guessing whether I handled the situation the best way possible. It's all a bit confusing, and I'm trying to sort out whether I should have done things differently or if my response was okay given how weird things got. Was this something I should have done differently? Now for the top comment. You are not the idiot and your father couldn't be more wrong. His comment that you could have just said no shows that he has a fundamental misunderstanding of a patient's vulnerability in a therapy session and the position of authority that a therapist holds. Honestly, you were super brave to take the initiative to walk out when you felt uncomfortable. You were not required to stay and confront her. If that didn't feel safe or like something you were capable of doing in that moment, and any good legitimate therapist would tell you that, not the idiot. Why would a mental health therapist ever ask you to lift your shirt? That's troubling. I wonder how many other young girls she did this to, and they just accepted it. Nope. You need to file an official report, not the idiot. You were standing up for yourself. Too many girls get hurt physically, mentally, or emotionally because they're afraid to be rude. I'm proud of you. And your dad should be too. Also, I don't think it's appropriate for the therapist to talk about herself or compare you to her. I'm no expert, but aren't body comparisons a trigger of eating disorders for some people? She sounds awful. Story 4. My partner and I are parents to a brand new 5-week-old baby who is totally dependent on mom for food because she's breastfeeding. Every night, like clockwork, our little one wakes up about 3 to 4 times. Each time, the baby needs to eat for a good 20 to 40 minutes. This routine has sparked a bit of a debate between us about who should do what during these nightly wake-ups. Here's where I'm coming from. I see that since she's already up to feed the baby, maybe it makes sense for her to change the baby's diapers too. I don't want to just stand by though. I've suggested splitting the diaper changes with her, offering to do half of them myself. However, she has a different view. She feels that because she's already taking on all the feeding responsibilities, which means she's up nursing during the day and all through the night, I should step up and handle the nighttime diaper changes. Her point is that these moments when I'm changing the baby's diaper are her few chances to take a quick break, to use the bathroom, grab a drink, or just catch her breath for a few minutes. There's also something else going on with how we handle these night shifts. She mentions that I can be a bit grouchy during these times. I don't always jump up at the first sound of the baby stirring, and sometimes I even grumble about whether the baby really needs a new diaper at all. On top of all this, our current work situations play a big role in how we're handling things. We are both currently on parental leave, so theoretically, we can both share these responsibilities evenly right now. But there's the upcoming shift in our routine to consider. I will be going back to my job in construction soon, where I really need to make sure I'm getting a solid 8 hours of sleep to be safe and effective at work. She, on the other hand, will still be on leave for about 18 months. Our typical schedule has us going to bed around 9 p.m. I'm up early at 6 a.m. to take care of our dogs, while she usually catches a little extra sleep since she's up later with the baby. This whole situation is about balancing our contributions at night, taking into account the physical demands made on her body by breastfeeding, and recognizing the rest I need to function well at my physically demanding job. It's a bit of a puzzle, and we're trying to figure out the best way to handle it so that everyone in our little family gets what they need. So am I the idiot? Now for the top comment. Hardcore. You are the idiot. Your wife is exhausted physically and due to lack of sleep. You have no excuse, especially while you're on parental leave. However, she does need to use the bathroom, drink water, whatever to take care of herself so she can take care of your son. Parenthood is about shared responsibilities and partnership. You need to grow up and share the burden. There's only room for one baby in your family. And it's not you. Time to be a dad. It's hard but tough. This is your moment to decide what kind of father and ultimately husband you want to be. Stop whining. Go pee, be a partner, dad. Husbands and help out this. I'll change half of the diapers is pure nonsense. Her body just created a baby. Now her body is healing and she is breastfeeding, meaning she's very tired because her body is busy healing and creating food for a baby and you needs your sleep. I'm cracking up. This is just embarrassing. Man, I don't understand. Some people. So when they decide to have a kid, do they think it's a cakewalk? Do they think it's going to be like in the movies where everything is colorful with soft light and smiling babies? Parenthood is hard and is a joint responsibility. You have to sacrifice some sleep time, money, and headspace. But why have a kid if you're not ready? My God, that poor woman. You are the idiot. A classic example of someone who wanted kids but didn't want to do any of the actual work of parenting. Probably assumed she would do all the hard, messy, inconvenient stuff, and he'd just take the kids to their soccer games and help with math homework.